Viltrox have recently released their 50mm f1.8 FE lens for Sony E-Mount cameras. But the question is this new affordable 50mm better than the super cheap Sony 50mm f1.8 FE? Well, before we find out, I first want to give a shout out to the Weeylite Ninja 20 video light for being the sponsor of today's video. Anyway, onto the B-roll. Both of these lenses are small and lightweight, though the Sony option really does take this to a whole another level, mainly due to it being a very basic plastic design with no manual buttons or switches. The Viltrox, on the other hand, has a much more robust metal construction and includes a D-clicked aperture ring. Though I should mention that neither lens has any kind of dust or weatherproofing. In terms of price, the Sony is obviously going to be the cheapest option, though that's not to say that the Viltrox is badly priced and it's still very much affordable. But when it comes to scoring for price, the Sony is clearly going to grab the first point here. When it comes to build, the Viltrox is the clear winner for me, mainly down to its more rugged metal finish, though for handling I am going to award both of these lenses a point because they're both super lightweight, small, and they just feel great on the front of my Sony A7 Mark III. When it comes to autofocus, in good lighting conditions, both lenses are quick and accurate to focus with no signs of hunting. In low light conditions, although both lenses did slow quite significantly, neither lenses displayed any real signs of hunting. When shooting a moving target at f1.8 in continuous mode, around half of the shots we took with these lenses were sharp, with the other half being marginally out of focus to varying degrees. What's clear though is that the majority of the misfocus shots created by these lenses occurred when George got closer to the camera. Now, despite the less than perfect results when shooting a moving target in burst mode, for the majority of the shoot, both of them were absolutely fine with stationary targets. So when it comes to scoring for points, I think both of them still deserve a point in this round, but only just. When shooting a moving target in video mode at f1.8, neither lens was perfect, to be honest, and I noticed that the AF would slightly lag behind George as he walked towards the camera, which is particularly noticeable at the end of the walk where he gets really close to the camera. You can see here that the lenses snap back into focus at the very last minute, almost as if the AF motor couldn't quite move fast enough to keep up with the action. When repeating this test but at a faster pace, once again the slow AF motors on both of these lenses struggled to keep up with the action. As for AF noise, neither lens was particularly quiet, and in both instances motor noise was picked up by our camera's built-in microphone. On the plus side though, when focusing manually with these lenses, both of them offer a smooth rotation with a pleasing amount of resistance and responsive control, which does make them ideal for focus pulls. In terms of focus breathing, the Sony is by far the worst offender, whilst the Viltrox really doesn't have much in the way of focus breathing. So with neither of these lenses putting in an ideal performance, I really can't rate either of these lenses for video use, and so that means that neither lens gets a point in this round. In our Bokeh balls test, both lenses produced nice round orbs at the center that slowly turn into cat's eye shapes towards the corners of the frame, though both results do also have their own unique issues. The orbs created by the Sony are noticeably more jagged than the Viltrox, though the Viltrox has a prominent onion ring effect, which doesn't really look that great. When it comes to general bokeh quality, the results are incredibly close, and it's really hard to tell the difference between these two results. Shooting at f1.8, both of them create a nice, soft, pleasing bokeh, which is ideal for portraits. So when it comes to scoring, both lenses are pretty much on par in this round, so they both deserve a point apiece. On our lens flare test, the cheaper Sony lens actually does a much better job of taming lens flare compared to the Viltrox, which in comparison produces a very washed out and messy result. Though, of course, both lenses do come included with lens hoods in the box to help shade the front element in harsh lighting conditions, which should alleviate some of this problem. On our longitudinal chromatic aberration test, both lenses suffer from teal fringing above the plane of focus and red at the bottom of the frame. When shooting with these lenses out in the real world, their small, lightweight frames made them super easy to pick up and shoot with, and it really was a refreshing change to use these lenses compared to the heavy glass that I'm used to working with on a day-to-day basis. For the most part, both lenses worked like an absolute dream. However, I did have a few issues with the Viltrox, particularly when shooting at a distance in portrait orientation and also when using my Sony A7 Mark III's face detection AF. When shooting in continuous AF mode, the camera would find faces with absolutely no problem, but then when it actually came to taking the photo, the focus would rack back and forth out of focus. This meant that the initial first few frames were wildly out of focus, but eventually it would lock on and everything would seem fine. Strangely, this wasn't a problem that happened all the time, and it appeared to happen less frequently when I was shooting in landscape. It also didn't seem to happen when shooting close up, and when shooting at this distance, the lens would just simply lock on perfectly every time with no issues at all. The Sony lens, on the other hand, didn't throw up any issues like this and worked perfectly throughout the shoot. Looking at these test images, it really is hard to tell which of these lenses produces the sharpest results. And it's not until you take a quick look at the test chart results that things become a little bit more clearer. When shooting at f1.8, at the center the results are very close, though the Sony is very marginally sharper with a touch more contrast. At the corners, however, the Viltrox is sharper and has more contrast. When it comes to focusing up close, the Sony has a slightly closer minimum focusing distance, and when we zoom in, it's also the sharper of the two options to boot. So before we get to scoring for image quality, first of all, I am actually going to deduct half a point from the Viltrox due to the face detect issues we had during the shoot. Now, the reason why I'm only taking away half a point in this case instead of a whole point is because Viltrox are actually pretty good at providing regular firmware updates for their lenses. And most of their lenses include a USB-C port on the lens mount, which means you can really easily update your lenses yourself. So I do have confidence that Viltrox will address and fix this issue in a future firmware update. In fact, if you're watching this in the future, it might not even be a problem anymore. It might have already been fixed, in which case you can reinstate the full point for AF. Regardless, AF fix or not, the Sony is still the better option when it comes to image quality, and so it gains itself the final point in this competition. Though, as a final nod to the Viltrox, I am going to give it half a point for image quality because truthfully, the test chart results really weren't all that far behind the Sony's. So once again, the bargain basement Sony 50mm has proved itself to be an amazing value for money option and takes the win in this head-to-head test. However, if this cheap plastic nifty 50 just isn't going to cut it for you and you need a 50mm that's going to be a lot more sturdy and won't break the bank in terms of budget, then keep your eye on this Viltrox because I think with future firmware updates it could be one to watch. Thanks again to Weeylite for sponsoring this video with their Weeylite Ninja 20. Now Weeylite haven't given me a script or anything to recite to you here. They literally gave me the light, said use it for a video and let people know honestly what you think about it. So here's some real talk about this light. Genuinely, I found this light a total breeze to use. It's super bright, 200 watt LED, which hasn't got any flicker at all. It means that you can shoot photo and video at the same time, which is exactly what we did for this video. Now, although we didn't record audio during the B-roll sections, there is a one button silent mode, which basically shuts off all the fans and is just completely silent. On the front of the unit, it uses Bowen's S-mount bayonet fitting, so it meant that I could use all of my existing softboxes with absolutely no problem at all. Anyway, Weeylite have kindly supplied me with a 10% discount voucher for you guys to use on any product, not just this one, in their web store. So if you are interested in learning more about the Ninja 20 or any of the other Weeylite products, be sure to check out the info in the video description below. See you in the next one.